Today is December 9th. This is our special rescheduled public safety meeting. The meeting is called to order, and we begin to acknowledge that the land on which we gather, and that is currently known as the city of West Hollywood, is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kritz people. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance, Vice Chair Balbone. Thank you. Commission Secretary, can we get a roll call, please?
Absolutely, Chair. Commissioner Berger?
Here.
Commissioner Oliver?
Here.
Commissioner Steele?
Here.
Vice Chair Balbone? Chair Hallman?
Present.
Please note that Commissioner Roman is currently absent.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. The approval of the agenda, are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Commission Secretary, can I please get a roll call?
So Commissioner Berger?
Aye.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Steele?
Aye.
Vice Chair Balbone?
Aye.
Chair Hallman?
Aye.
The agenda is approved.
Thank you. Item 5 is the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes from our November 12th meeting, Commissioners?
I have a question. We very specifically addressed a category of crime and education around that category of crime, and that crime was rape or sexual assault and spikes that we see in two particular times of the year. When I saw the minutes, it was generalized, and my concern is that this is a very specific crime with very specific actions that this commission suggested. So I'd like to understand why the minutes didn't reflect that, the context of the conversation.
Yeah, and do you know what page, by chance, Vice Chair, that's on?
It was 8E, I think, under nighttime safety.
I think you're right.
I'm sorry. you said-
It was 8B, actually, and it's about 3 items up from the bottom of the page.
Okay, just give me a minute. You said 8E?
8B is in boy.
B as in boy. And I'm just reading through it as Vice Chair wanted to bring focus on the noticeable crime spikes. Is that the sentence you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly make an amendment. I mean, staff tries to do the best that they can in terms of, articulating the details of the discussion, but it's the will of the commission. We can certainly make an amendment to that.
I would like that amended.
Sure. So for that sentence you're stating, so Vice Chair Balbone wanted to bring focus on the noticeable crime spikes, maybe comma, specifically rape and sexual assaults, comma, right? And then follow through in terms of during the months of October and June of each year. Is that fine?
Yes.
Absolutely. So it's read into the record. If the will of the commission is to approve that, we'll make sure that that is updated.
Thank you.
And Commissioners, any additional changes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Commission Secretary, can we please get a roll call?
Absolutely. Commissioner Berger?
Aye.
Commissioner Oliver?
Abstain.
Commissioner Steele?
Aye.
Vice Chair Balbone?
Aye.
Chair Hallman?
Aye.
The item is approved.
Thank you. Item 6, public comments. Commission Secretary, do we have any public comments waiting on Zoom or in queue?
There are, do not see any public participants as a part of Zoom, and we have not received any speaker slips in chambers.
So no speakers this evening.
No speakers.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner comments. Do any commissioners have any comments they'd like to make? Commissioner Steele?
Yes, good evening. I've been battling bronchitis, but I'm a little bit better, so forgive me if I have to step out or what have you. I wanted to first congratulate Commissioner Oliver on an amazing campaign for city council, and more immediately and importantly, a new position. I'm very excited to see you in a role that's going to reflect our community for this district. And I'm, of course, thrilled to see an LGBTQ person in that position, obviously. So I'm just excited to have you in that role and see what that means for the city. So congrats. I had sent an email through to Danny, and I meant to send a follow-up, Chair. The RFP had gone out on the municipal study, the study for our own West Hollywood Municipal Police Force. My understanding is that we have submissions from that RFP. I know the timeline closed, and I had asked for an update on that. I asked specifically if it's coming to public safety, since that would clearly fall within our purview. And I really would like to make sure that and if it exists somewhere, let me know, but I'd like to make sure that that is something that is on the radar of this body and that we are paying attention to. We're looking at the potential of building our own police force in the city of West Hollywood in the future. It's extremely important, and I'd like to see us engaged as early as possible, including looking at those bids. I don't know what the process has been for things like that previously with this body. I know when it comes to other bodies, they have engagement on that level. But I'd like to see not just a staff recommendation, but I'd like to review all the bids if that's possible, so we could look at it through a specific lens. I, in particular, tried to make sure that it went out to folks outside of the norm. So we had some folks with actual trackable experience with DEI practices and specifically police accountability practices, not just statements. So I just think it's extremely important for this body to be engaged for all of our perspectives. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Steele. Any other additional commissioner comments? I have one. I would love to make a motion to see if we can agendize having our HIV Zero program come in and do a presentation to us. As a gay man who lived through the AIDS pandemic in the 80s, it was incredibly scary times. Now, thankfully, we have great cocktails, preventative as well as undetectable cocktails, but I think we're missing something, with our younger community who did not see the plight and the horror of death that we did. So I just want to make sure as a city we are doing our best to educate people. So I would like to make a motion to have them come in at an upcoming meeting and present to us.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Chair, can I add a thought to that just for future dialogue? Thank you. Some of this is as it relates to the sexual assault crisis, but again, it shows why these are such layered important conversations. One of the things that we have uncovered in kind of the working dialogue about some of the recent assault cases is that PEP is not made readily available to all assault survivors. And so we had a trans man who was a victim of sexual assault who went to Cedars. We've been talking about wraparound services and those things, so I just want to add that to that dialogue, just the conversation of PrEP and PEP and availability and competency in that area for our care providers.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And my motion is not to pause shame anyone, but just bring a greater awareness to our community, because we lost several generations of gay men to AIDS. I don't have any mentors to tell me how to be an old gay dude now because, you know, they're gone. So, all right, great. Item 8, unfinished business. While we're moving along here, we are up to our fire chief. Yeah, now we can see you. Good evening, Chief.
Well, thank you to the Public Safety Commission of West Hollywood. We appreciate your support in West Hollywood with all of our firefighters. As you know, they do a tremendous job day in and day out. They're very busy. And everything that we've been through in the past couple of years, every day they were at work doing it and meeting the need. And they need to be really looked at as some significant people that take a significant stance in public safety with, of course, our law enforcement partners as well. So for the month of November, it was routine as far as the call volume, about 20 runs a shift through your West Hollywood station, so relatively busy. We did have average amount of fires, which were most of rubbish fires with one structure fire with a total of 13 fires. We had 428 medical calls. We transported 311 patients with 114 of them needing advanced life support intervention and 197 needing basic life support. We had 0 hazardous materials calls. We had 8 hazardous condition calls, which were electrical line down or just utility lines or somebody reported as a hazardous condition that we mitigated. We had 33 service calls, and we had 123 good intent calls. So with going into the holiday season, I really appreciate the safety message you put out on West Hollywood's website for general safety that we talked about last month. So I appreciate that. It helps. But as we're seeing as we get into the holiday season, we do have an uptake in accidental home events, if you will. So kind of some of the newer topics that are really coming to light nationally is actually electrical fires in the home with electric type of devices, whether it be, and I'm not saying a brand, I'm using it so people get some perspective behind it, is like the Roombas or like your plug-in vacuum cleaners or your e-bikes or your scooters and such. And so it looks like some of those that are off-brand or not UL listed that haven't been through some rigorous tests, that they're having failures in this that are causing fires across the nation. And so it will have impact. And so also we're finding that people that may need a new device of some sort think that it fits and it's the correct voltage to charge it, and it's actually not, so they're having failure. So that is actually nationally an uptake right now with some of those. And I know that we're getting into an electronic world with everything that we do. So whether it's your smartphone, your tablet or stuff, we're seeing an uptake in this nationally on accidental fires because of electronic devices. So I just wanted to mention that. So we can also review that and people to be aware of those things and be cognizant of that. And with that, we're looking as far as what we see also as we get into the holiday season is unattended cooking fires in the home. Maybe small, but they're just going to the store, they leave something in the oven, they leave it on the stovetop, and it has the potential to lead to bigger things. So I know folks may think they're just going to be out real quick, but real quick sometimes gets delayed, and when we just leave that cooking, whether it's in the oven or on the stovetop, it possibly has consequence. So that also goes up this time of year with people enjoying the holidays. So, and that's all I have. Is there anything for me?
I did have a question, and you and I spoke about this briefly.
Yes.
I had mentioned that about 2 weeks ago, because I am a fire survivor and the PTSD is really real. You just never forget. I know the sound of a fire vehicle coming before I even hear the sirens. And it was 7 in the morning, so I jump up, I run to the window, and it was like, I'll say full battalion because I don't know the correct terms, but it was the long hook and ladder, emergency vehicles. And then I saw one of our fire officials craning the ladder toward a building, across the street from me. And I believe in the end, it possibly was a training exercise because as I watched them, no one seemed to be moving with any urgency. So as I had asked, training exercises, and I live on Formosa, there are a lot that happen on my street. Is there any way that if this is happening, and believe me, I want our fire department to be able to train so they're prepared, where they have a seahorse or some type of signage that they can put up on the side of the truck that says training exercise or something, because 7 in the morning is, most people haven't had their coffee yet.
Right. I understand. So potentially they could have been drilling, and we do that routinely. And for a lot of times, we don't have organized drills sometimes, like where we have a captain, we have newer firefighters or new people that are driving the apparatus. Our fire captains, a lot of times, will do an impromptu park, ladder the building, and so that operational readiness of surprise. So you say they weren't in any rush, I guess you could say. But what we're more importantly, are we efficient? Because you don't want to be quick. If you're efficient, then you'll be fast. So as far as how we could do a better messaging if we're going to drill, I would have to look at how we're going to do that, because I think it's unrealistic that we're going to put these big sawhorses on the fire trucks or how we're going to do it. And I do apologize if we did disrupt somebody before their coffee, but we don't do it to disrupt anybody's lives. We're doing it to train, because different elements that we may be able to swing to a building or do something may have an opportunity that we would like to say, hey, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to go on Formosa, we're going to swing. That's when we take the ladder, the aerial ladder to the building, we swing the building, that we would go there. Then at 2 in the afternoon, we can't because of parking, or there's 3 Amazon trucks stacked up where we need to park or whatever it may be. So I know that there is some inconvenience with that, and I take responsibility for that. But our people are out there training, but they don't want to disrupt your lives.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I have a great respect for our fire teams. Like I said, when you survive a fire and you see how quickly they leap into action, it really is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I'll identify that with them and say, hey, you surprised one of the commissioners.
Yes, no, thank you. Any other questions for our fire chief? Yes, Commissioner Berger.
I've got 3 questions.
Okay.
One is for these electrical fires, and it appears like it's something with the maybe a higher voltage that are plugged in that didn't used to be. Is there something that we can do, like the breaker switches in the houses? Is there some physical thing that we can do so this can't happen with these type of more high voltage devices?
So in a lot of times it won't be the circuit breaker unless you're drawing too much amperage out of it. What happens is it's a failure from where you plug it into the wall, from the core to the device itself. And so the failure happens for where you plug it in at the device itself. Consequently, it may trip or short going backwards to the electrical panel. That is a possibility, but the cause is from the outlet to the device itself. So something in between there, I don't see a mechanism for that unless it has an internal type of circuit.
Well,
breaker.
some of the newer houses in buildings have a little breaker on the actual plugs themselves.
Correct. That's a ground fault indicator. Correct, they do. But usually that energy is going to come through the cord and it's going into the device. And that to have a significant failure before it fails would have to trip it, but the fire is already happening regardless if that circuit breaker's tripped.
Maybe there's a way, there's something out there that it's dummy proof. Nobody can make a mistake and plug their thing in.
Yeah, I would hope so, but there's a lot of it if you're getting devices that are not as well built, that aren't UL listed, that's where we're seeing failures, or people that just mistakenly use the wrong type of plug-in, that it requires a certain voltage, but it fits. So they go, oh, well, this is work, and don't know that they could significantly overheat the battery by too much energy going to that battery and overheating it. So.
Okay, so I would like to make a recommendation to council and staff that this be investigated, some more permanent safety fix, a physical safety fix, that it be investigated. I would like to make a motion with...
It does sound like it's more of an education thing, like knockoff products, things,
Correct.
versus like a technological fix. It's more of letting people know.
Mm-hmm. So I could say that if you have electronic devices that you're using and you're using a multi-strip that have a breaker, because let's say that you happen to be using a electronic device, so let's just say a drill, and it's a big drill, and you have a small 20 amp panel and it requires 50 to take, it would trip it. So that's its intended use for a circuit breaker to trip before it trips the main circuit breaker. But this is I feel you're right, this is something on an educational piece that we need to deliver for our electronic business that we do in West Hollywood with people in this, that they need to be aware of this.
I think it's both. It would be good both. You know, the plugs where they have the one bigger side and the smaller side, that's intended so people cannot make a mistake.
Correct.
So they don't all have to be educated. I would like to still make the motion that this gets investigated, that they consider investigating some kind of a fix for this. I would like to make a motion. If somebody wants to second it, we can just vote to recommend that.
I'll second it.
Can we amend that to be an educational? Because here's the thing. I think the thing that's probably most important is making sure that people know if they've got a device, it heats up, to be very thoughtful, to probably look at the brands they're buying. So there's probably an awareness thing, because if there's a solution out there and we ask the fire department to investigate the solutions, that could take a while, but education can happen pretty promptly. So if we want to do something active, I would say let's do the education around, tips, pointers, and then if there's more that we could do and there's technology out there, I think we can ask people to investigate it.
I will amend the motion that we do both, including the cooking fires, some kind of educational that goes out, in addition to this, alert people and educate them, and also, and for the long term, to investigate some sort of physical way to make this safe, because it's a new thing and it's going to be here with us maybe for a long time.
I think that goes beyond the purview of the Public Safety Commission. There are agencies who handle consumer affairs, safety of products, who would be the ones to defer that issue to. I think what I'm hearing is on a local level, it's really letting people know that, hey, there are products that you may have regarded as safe, but now the market may not be entirely legitimate products, or there may be mistakes that are possible. And that really comes down to a public safety awareness campaign. I don't think it's our purview to investigate. Like I don't know if there's an electrical engineer on the commission or on the council, and I think it's kind of beyond.
It's a recommendation from it's a safety issue. It's a recommendation for them to investigate. That's just coming from us. We're safety. So-
Director Rivas.
Can I actually give my feedback prior to that? Sorry, is that okay?
Yeah.
So I think before we make a motion on the first piece of it, which is education, I just wanted to offer my thoughts on that. And that is, I'd love to just ask if we do another holiday public safety message. I also want to commend that message. I thought it was great. I did see it, and I was also really happy to see that go out and happen so quickly, especially at such a busy time. And I think that's a great kind of use of the power of this commission working collectively. So I'd like to add to like a holiday message about safety, something about unattended cooking, something about maybe the trees dying out, holiday lights and lighting, and then just, safety about, plugging it in. And that might be its own thing. I don't know. I'll leave that with you all in comms, but something about the plugs, use a multi-strip when you can, check your items to make sure they're properly UL listed. I haven't even thought of the term UL listed in such a long time, but that's one of those small things. So I just wanted to add that for the messaging piece. So if we do make a motion, it's kind of packaged in, if that's okay.
I would add one thing. I mean, people are buying gifts right now. The listing of, just if you're buying,
Check the listing.
check the listing.
That's great, yeah.
I mean, that could weave it into a message, and I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, in terms of the investigative portion, I want to be clear, at least for staff, in terms of what it is that you're asking. I think that the educational piece makes complete sense. And there are obviously other agencies that work with those that are providing these types of equipment or outlets or strips. But that's it. I just want to be clear in terms of what it is that you're asking staff to investigate, because I'm not clear on that.
Well, Chair Berger, would you be willing to make an amendment where we make this educational and hold off on the investigative?
I can make it more general. Some sort of, and building and safety have come with us and spoken with us too. It's something more general to put on our radar, to look into a possible physical solution that, like the thing with a plug. You can't plug something in upside down. Some kind of a thing where there's, if it's higher voltage and it could cause a fire, something that would kick it off or alert the people. So it would be very general that staff or council would look into that. It's so preliminary. I just wanted to put that on the radar, that we start looking ahead, and in the meantime that we do exactly these educational things, because this could take a long time to do the investigative part. So it would leave it up to them. But that would be a solution that I think has happened in homes and apartment buildings with things that have occurred like this before. You don't have those kinds of, you have circuit breakers, it can't plug in backwards, something like that I think may continue with a new change that is happening now in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's best is maybe looking at staff. You mentioned building and safety, which would actually be, the appropriate division to look into such things. But, there is the California Electrical Code that is applied to every single building. That electrical code is state law. Every city within the state of California has to adopt that and abide by it. It does get reviewed and it gets updated every 3 years. We're actually going through that process through building and safety as we speak, in terms of bringing forth updated codes at the state level. But, there are minimum requirements, right, of course, that are applied. You mentioned a number of them, certain things that would trigger or trip a circuit breaker, GFCI outlets. I think we're all familiar with that, but that's because that's all required under the California Electrical Code. So, but for us to look into establishing or investigating, to your point, maybe some type of device, that you would require. It's just not practical to have that expectation. So I just want to just bring that forth to the commission. We can certainly look at ways and sees if there is something out there. I'm unaware of anything. I think the educational piece regarding this is the most important aspect.
Maybe it would be a letter coming from our city to the county or whoever is in charge, just to put it on a radar, because our fire personnel have just alerted us to this. I want it down on the record that we really, this is serious. He brought this up. And there's something that we want to make some noise however we can, if it's to county or whatever.
There are agencies, there are people that specifically, they go to work every day to address issues just like this. That's why I'm saying this is kind of above the scope of what this commission, there are federal and state agencies. It's not handled at a local level. Local level issues would be educating residents locally, certifying and regulating consumer products, and fire safety. That's done at a state and federal level, not at a municipal level.
So I want to stay with the motion that we recommend some sort of a letter. If you want to change it to a letter and the educational both at the same time, I want a voice coming from our commission. We've had a second on the motion. We can just vote on it.
Commissioner Seal?
Yeah, thank you. I think that what I'm hearing from our fire chief, who I trust to come to this body with the recommendations and concerns, is a concern to get information out to the public. And you also answer that you're not aware of a device that would do this type of thing. So I don't see the benefit of I don't think it's a good use of staff time. It's a good use of resource. I think it's a simple recommendation, to your point, from this body to building and compliance. If we know this is something building and compliance is looking into, and they're doing it now, I think we're like striking while the iron is hot, so to speak. So I think it's a good time, but I think it would suffice to leave it with Director Rivas to reach out to building and compliance and share that public safety's had feedback from the fire chief, and we'd like to make sure that in addition to looking into anything current, that they're also looking into any potential future opportunities that we can suggest to landlords, because we can't control that either. So I would ask to make an amendment to the motion to simply ask Director Rivas to send a note to building and compliance to do what you're asking to do, but kind of in the scope of the work they're already doing and in their purview, if that makes sense to everyone.
Okay. Are we all in agreement?
I just want this to be something definite coming from us. I don't want it to be behind the scenes. I want it to be on record. So I agree and leave it to them how to do it, but I would like it to go on record with City Council that we made a motion and we voted on this.
Yeah, and absolutely. And just so the commission knows, I mean, we'll make sure to be detailed in terms of our minutes to reflect such things, which will be on record. Obviously, our meetings are recorded for reference purposes, but and we also send a synopsis that goes actually to the City Council at every City Public Safety Commission meeting. So we'll make mention of that. And I appreciate the opportunity to convey that to Building and Safety, who I know actually has a seat at the table in terms of conveying when they are looking at codes every 3 years, right, making changes. So we'll bring that to their attention, for sure.
Are we separating the two motions, the educational piece and the second one?
You can, or if there's consensus, we can just do one motion if both of those make sense and consensus with the commission.
Okay. Are we in unanimous agreement?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Can you bring that back to us that you did it and that you sent the letter?
Absolutely, Commissioner Berger. I'll make sure to add that to the request tracking and then provide an update on that.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, I had a resident contact me yesterday, and I went up there and walked around various safety concerns. And one was about parking and on the street where a curb had been painted and red, and that it was some sort of safety, and this resident thought that that was, there was no sort of code. Is there like a distance, an exact distance in a street where a fire truck needs to get through? How is that determined? I would assume that there's an exact measurement where a fire truck needs to get through, and it's not just random somebody just saying, I think we should put a red curb here or not.
So you're talking about a red curb then?
A red curb, and yeah, on a street,
Uh-huh.
the width of a street,
Okay.
that a fire truck can get through.
Okay.
Is that a law?
There is fire code to that, but also depends on the age of the street. So I can give the intent of what a red fire lane does or a red curb. It could be a marking because there is a sprinkler system or standpipe system that's proximal to there, so it gives us the ability to get close to that. And two, it gives us the ability to get closer to the building so we can have other apparatus or law enforcement so we don't block the road. We don't like to block the road. So there is an intended use for fire lanes and also red curbing markings, and it's for us to have access to a building. We have a lot of hose that stretch a lot of different ways. We have ground ladders that don't bend that well. So this is an access component. So if you have too many cars that are parked and we can't maximize what we can do with our hose or our ladder complement, that's why a lot of times that these red curbings are there is for a water issue or an access issue or a ladder issue. So
Okay.
there is certain requirements, but depending on how old it is, we have people that get creative with marking their own curb. So I would have to know the exact address.
Okay.
I will have our fire prevention go out and look at it, and we will see what needs to be done, if there's anything that needs to be done.
Perfect.
But
And
it serves a purpose.
yeah, if we can stay in touch with email, and I can, because this resident believes that there's a group of the people there that don't believe this red curb should be there. So if you have some sort of explanation, I can send that to them along with your explanation. You guys can investigate it. Can you get him my email address
So we
as
can,
well?
if you don't mind, if it works, is if you send the information to Danny.
Okay.
Correct.
We'll send it to me, and we'll work together on this. And
Perfect.
we will get you, and we'll go out and do a site inspection, and we'll do and see what the intent is and the why behind it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Commissioners, any additional questions for our chief?
Yes, thank you. I used to live on Stanley, and I remember the drills that happen there all the time. So I am familiar with what you're talking about, Chair. And there's always something exciting. I don't know if it's like bringing me back to childhood because I used to live near a fire department. But I'm familiar with that. And so I don't think that, I understand what you're saying about, can we put a sawhorse, can we put signage? I don't know that makes sense, but I do understand what Chair is referring to and just kind of the nervousness some folks go through, especially some of our elder community. They might want to know. And so it reminded me of something else that happened recently that is relative, and that is, I guess the question is, sorry, I'll two-part it, and again, I'm on a lot of meds, so I apologize. In these instances, for fire drills specifically, maybe there can't be changes kind of to the scope of what you're doing or with the timeliness, but if we know it's happening in a particular location, can a message not go out to Director Rivas or staff and something that lets us know so they can put out an alert like we used to get EMS alert, that kind of thing, or public broadcast alerts, but some type of an alert. And then the second piece of that is, next door and places like that are really good resources just to share that quick kind of real-time information where we wouldn't have to take up comms. They're already stretched. There's other ways that we can do this. I know we have some other other mechanisms to look at. That doesn't mean we necessarily squash this, but maybe we find another avenue to reach out. And the thing that it reminded me of, that it brought me back to, was I was talking to an owner of a business right up the street here, and there was a power outage, and the power was out on a particular block for a chunk of hours. And during that time, the store, there was a theft in the store. And so I thought, well, surely we could just let the the business owners on that block know. I mean, we have that kind of small town capability, right? There's things we can and can't do. So my question is, and to look at a mechanism to do that, right? I'm not saying I expect Director Rivas or anyone to get on the phone and start calling them, but my question is, when we know there's a power outage, like when we get notifications or texts from the power company, can that go out, and can a secondary notice go out? This I will ask for whoever is the appropriate person to, like, block by block and just say, hey, we've got power down on this block for these hours. It's either a, business, community, residential, whatever the case is. We'd love to get some extra feet on the ground there and get a little additional support to those businesses or potentially residents. So I just thought maybe there's some other avenues we can look at, like utilizing Nextdoor or SMS or whatever the case is. So that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. So we rely on Southern California Edison to provide us with notifications. So I can share with the commission that anytime there is a scheduled or unscheduled power outage, we do get notified. There are a number of different departments that are a part of that. We do push that on over to our sheriff station as well as to our block-by-block security ambassadors. If it is something scheduled, or it makes it easier for us, right, to provide that advance notice. Engineering, there's a lot of public works, obviously facilities, field services, et cetera, folks that are involved. But when it's unscheduled and you just have something that occurs, again, Edison does push out. And so what we have done in the past, and what we can look into doing more so now, is encouraging residents even to sign up on their own, which they can, and they would receive that same notification. I'm a Southern California Edison holder in terms of the power that's being supplied to my home, and so I have signups too. So I know I get an email, I get a text message as well on my phone that lets me know, and they usually kind of give you a window of time, but it rarely, if ever, actually gets turned back on within that time frame. But yeah, we can certainly look at that to push that out.
And that, when Commissioner Oliver and I were working on the emergency preparedness plan, did I get that right? That was something I suggested. I know we have a county, I believe, notification system, but I think we should have our own notification texting system in the city of West Hollywood in the event that there's an emergency or this information that needs to be disseminated to residents. They know, because I know recently the power went out and I happened to be not home, and I got so many calls from residents as neighborhood watch captain. So I think a system like that is critical, especially in the unfortunate era that we live in. Mm-hmm. Mass shootings, other things.
Yeah, so the city does have an account with Nixle, and I know our sheriff's station, as well as our Los Angeles County Fire Department, provides alerts and messaging as well. And so there is a way for folks to be able to subscribe to that, right? But they need to subscribe. If they don't subscribe, it makes it difficult to kind of reach out to certain folks. But we'll look into that, and I think communication, again, I think is going to be key in working and trying to make a heightened level of awareness for folks to log on and register, right? So they can get different alerts from different agencies.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just think if on that front, because I've seen the Nixle stuff posted on Nextdoor, which, believe me, I have a love-and-hate relationship with, but a lot of folks do tune into what's going on in the neighborhood. If we can look at, in addition, not just asking them to subscribe, because some will and some won't, right? It is what it is. But a lot of folks are more on social media and plugging in those ways and communicating those ways. And so I don't know what that looks like. Is that disseminating it to neighborhood watch captains and having them take the stewardship of posting it on places like Nextdoor and social media, whatever that could be? And I'll save the block by block question for our friends at Block by Block. But my question will be, what happens when that information reaches, and how can we additionally support, since these are all contracted city vendors? So thank you.
Chief Smith, before we end, is there anything that you need to help keep us more safe?
We are good. We love the support. That's all we need is the support. If I can, a couple things that this is great is if we look at, you talk about mass notifications or notifications in general. I'll work with Danny. We'll talk to OEM. We'll see what is the best fit for West Hollywood, see what we have in place now, and see what the best fit is. Does that sound fair? So I'll work with Danny on that, and we'll connect with Kevin McGowan with OEM and see how and we'll have a conversation on what the best fit for West Hollywood is on emergency alert notifications, rather than people relying on Nextdoor, which isn't the most credible at times, if that's fair to say. And so we want official information that comes out. So I'll work with Danny on and with our OEM partners on what the best fit for West Hollywood is. And then just to close, I enjoyed the conversation regarding the safety component. And so we did the November type of overview on the website. So we'll enhance that as we continue. I just don't want it to be a one and done. So Danny, myself, Margarita, and Megan will work on some good components as we transition into the rest of December and as we get into the new year. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, great, yes. Thank you,
That's
Chief.
all I have.
When you talk with OEM, I don't know if this is possible, but when you end up doing a training, if there's just a push you can give to them that says a training went on, that would help, I think.
OEM does a great job, and we have good avenue to talk to them on doing what we need to do. So
Yeah.
Danny and I
Just
are on it.
thinking what, you mentioned, if there was a way that you pop out the training message, and then if you're anxious, you go check and you're like, oh, it's just training. I got it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll work on this. That's all I have. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Chief, for your time, and happy holidays.
Yeah, you bet. We'll be here. Thank you.
Item 8B, our monthly report from our Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Yost.
And Chair, you know what, just so you know, we're at the request of the commission, we're making sure that we're putting up on the screen all the reports as recommended last commission meeting.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Happy holidays to you all. Congratulations, Commissioner Oliver. I know you're going to do great things in that new role. You're a good person. For the month of November, West Hollywood Station personnel handled 1,694 calls for service, with 80 of those being an emergency response. Thanks to the hardworking deputies, they made several arrests. There was 46 felony arrests and 103 misdemeanor arrests. 2 of these felony arrests involved deputies conducting traffic stops in which they recovered prohibited firearms from occupants in the vehicles. 1 arrest was of a pickpocket suspect. There were 188 Part 1 crimes for this month, for the month of November. Breakdown of the city, the west side was 55% with 104 Part 1 crimes. City center was 26% with 49 Part 1 crimes, and the east side was 19% with 35 Part 1 crimes. Overall, our crime numbers continue to be driven by theft. Our grand theft, petty theft, vehicle burglaries accounted for 68% of the Part 1 crimes in November. There were 36 cell phone pickpockets, which is higher than usual, but lower than last month. Vehicle burglaries and vehicle thefts, we had 27 vehicle burglaries and 16 vehicle thefts. There's 1 rape in the month of November, which is 1 rape too many. Our cops and EPT team continue to conduct weekly operations based on crime trends. On November 11th, EPT team made a significant arrest of an individual who was in possession of nunchucks and 30.8 grams of methamphetamine. On November 16th, West Hollywood Station, in coordination with city staff, held the West Hollywood Citizen Academy graduation. This academy was highly praised by all participants, and we had several participants that are interested in being volunteers. We look forward to conducting another Citizen Academy in the near future. On November 30th, West Hollywood Station hosted a presentation by FBI's handling agent for the Pulse nightclub shooting. This presentation was a critical incident briefing on one of the worst attacks in the LGBTQ+ community in the United States. The briefing was divided into a 1-hour presentation for our civilian partners. In attendance was block by block, West Hollywood City staff, code enforcement, and personnel from Universal Studios. Following that was a 3-hour presentation, breakdown and analysis for law enforcement only. We had 43 law enforcement participants. Various LASD patrol stations attended, specialized units, as well as surrounding police agencies. Commissioner Still, last meeting you asked for an update on drink spiking report. I was informed by our crime analyst that we had 17 reports of drink spiking year to date, with only one of these in November. You asked about our footbeat deployment in the evening hours. We had 19 deployments in the evening hours of November. Commissioner Berger, you asked about Estes robberies, and you wanted them listed in the report. There were 2 Estes robberies in November, and one of these Estes involved a firearm. I'd also like to read a press release involving 2 very recent incidents we've had. December 8th, West Hollywood Station desk personnel received a call from a nightclub security guard informing them that a male adult in the nightclub had shown another male a firearm and attempted to have the male take the firearm. Deputies responded to the location, conducted a protective sweep, and were unable to locate the suspect. If anyone has any information on the case, please call West Hollywood Sheriff Station at 310-855-8850. Further, on December 7th, at approximately 3:03 p.m., West Hollywood Station received a priority call for service regarding a domestic violence incident. Deputies responded to the 1100 block of Poinsettia Drive in the city of West Hollywood regarding a domestic violence call. Upon arrival, an irate individual, unrelated to the domestic violence incident, approached deputies and stood at the entrance of the apartment complex, not allowing deputies to enter the location and conduct their investigation. In domestic violence incidents, every second is critical to the safety of our involved victims. As a result of the individual preventing deputies from entering the apartment complex to get the domestic violence incident, a use of force occurred, and the individual was arrested for obstructing deputies in the lawful course of their duties. Deputies were then able to go to the apartment where the alleged domestic violence incident was occurring. Deputies contacted a male who was home alone at the residence. He said his girlfriend was not there for a couple days. A protective sweep of the location was conducted, and no one else was located at the apartment. So to protect the integrity of these investigations, I'm not going to make any further comments on these 2 investigations. Are there any comments for me, questions?
I have a couple questions. One is, I noticed that there was a spike, specifically very high standout in city center on the vehicle burglaries. Was that one situation where they hit a line of cars? It looked like, it was split through the territory of city center, but it was 474.
Yeah, we did have a particular parking lot that we had an issue with, okay. And we actually conducted an operation this past week dealing with that crime.
Okay, and I understand that you cannot comment further on these situations, but what I would like to understand is you all have cameras, right? And as part of what is going to happen is a review of the camera footage because there was a force situation And can you just describe the kind of investigation that happens? I don't want details about this specific case, but just what happens when you have a force situation.
So when we do have a force investigation, a supervisor is assigned that. A supervisor responds, and then the supervisor also investigates that, and they review it. And they have to answer several questions and review policy and make sure that the entire incident fell within department policy.
Thank you. And I watch a little too much Law and Order, but is there any possibility that this was a situation where that individual who happened to be in front of the building when you arrived could have, and I'm going to not ask you to answer this, but it just seems very, all of it seems very concerning and strange, and so thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Sergeant Yost? All right, Commissioner Oliver.
Well, I want to congratulate Sheriff Luna, our new sheriff, and I also, to our fire chief and to our deputies, I want to thank you for the work that you do. While we're enjoying our holidays, there'll be those in uniform who will be at work, working overtime to keep us safe. So thank you. And also, the work that you're doing, there's an epidemic of gun violence in this country, and our community is under particular threat. So getting illegal guns off the street, doing proactive training to keep our LGBTQ community here in West Hollywood safe is so important. And so I'm very happy to hear that that's taking place. And that's all I want to say. So thank you.
Commissioner Berg.
I got that notification on Nixle about somebody had a gun inside of one of the clubs and tried to give it to somebody else. That was really odd. And I was with a resident, and we went to a club right outside the security guards of the club, and this had just happened an hour and a half before, so this person is still at large. And I said, did you guys know about this? And they were like, no, and they were worried, and they asked me to send them that, the Nixle post and everything. So I guess I want to bring light to our clubs sort of collaborating and working together when they know something like this has happened. I know we talked about this with the pickpocketing as well. They seemed like they wanted to collaborate with each other more. And also, how easy is it to get a gun into a club? Is that really difficult, or is that normal? I mean, is it hard for somebody to sneak a gun into a club, just in your opinion?
In my opinion, no, it isn't. It's very easy. Unfortunately, it is very easy. It depends on the establishment. If the establishment is, conducting checks for that, or, maybe they have a wand and check for firearms. It all depends on the location and who they allow to enter. We can't make that decision. They have to make that decision before.
Is there anything, I know last time I asked this, is there anything else that you need to help keep us more safe?
Just like we spoke about last time, just the staffing, the personnel, and your guys' support. I know each one of you supports us, and I truly appreciate that.
I have a question. The establishment where said incident happened, I know there are other bars on the street that do the photo ID, so they know who's in. Do we know, did this particular location have the same system?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. All right, that answers my question then, but thank you. Any other questions for Sergeant Yost? Yes.
Yes, I do. First of all, it was the Abbey. It's public information, so I don't know why we continue to do this strange thing. It's very public information where that happened. So it is the Abbey. They came here and showed us their. And the reason I say I don't like the safeguarding of the names and those things is that this is the kind of dialogue that we have to have, right? We know, for example, that this is a club that captures identification information. They spoke to us about it. They also spoke to us about working with one other venue. Did that other venue receive any communication at all? And also, once again, just a reminder as we continue to make suggestions like capture IDs at every bar, clearly, once again, we had someone who was not detained, nor did that information seem to help in that instance, right? So, okay, I'm going to go just in order of what I have written here, so I appreciate your patience. I also want to congratulate Sheriff Luna, not just on being elected. You know, a group of us LGBTQ community leaders really pushed for a meeting with him during his campaign, and he held that meeting, and we were very clear with him about some of the concerns we've had historically, some of the cultural competency issues across the board, and just the future of what that position will look like. So I appreciated that. I also put out the back call to have him join us along with a few other folks at the vigil that we held for the recent tragedy at another LGBTQ establishment, and he answered that call immediately, and he came and he spoke with us, and I cannot say enough how grateful that I am for that showing of support and real-time support and real dialogue in terms of how we can engage better. So I appreciate that continued dialogue, and I appreciate very much the deputies that came out to that event that were, we made little rainbow ribbons for them, and many of them wore them. Those who didn't, I think, just didn't get an opportunity to get them. It was a bit of a crowded space, but I appreciate that showing of support. And I also know there were some other upset community folks there, and they were very graceful in those moments. And there was some heated dialogue, as well as obviously the vigil that we were there for. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I did send that note over to Captain Mulder. In regard to the Pulse presentation, and I may not have the full capture of what that was or what the intention was, but I'd like to understand what that was and if city staff was invited, if there's a reason that the LGBTQ leaders in this city weren't invited to that, particularly the commissioners and board members, to receive that presentation. I know that I personally put together the Pulse Memorial that happened in the city. That was not council or anyone else. That was city community members that came together. And many of us are continuing to have dialogues about nightlife safety in this commission specifically. I'll be frank, I think specifically the LGBTQ members need to be invited to those dialogues. So what am I missing?
Yeah. So, and Sergeant Yost can add if I'm missing anything, but the training was actually coordinated through the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station, and it happened extremely quickly. After obviously the unfortunate situation that occurred in Colorado Springs, and it just so happened that some of the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station deputies had attended a training and had actually seen for the first time this presentation. And so given kind of the coincidental, unfortunate situation, they reached out to the special agent at the Federal Bureau of Investigation and coordinated that. So it wasn't an internal training. It was not open to the public. It was not intended for that. And so it really dived into operational aspects from a law enforcement perspective that city staff and civilian staff didn't sit in the total completeness, right, as they were getting into kind of the logistics. But the first half of the presentation was very eye-opening. I actually attended and was able to kind of coordinate in terms of what Sergeant Yost had mentioned. You know, we had our code enforcement staff, we had our block-by-block security ambassadors. We also extended the invitation to our parking enforcement staff as well, and even some of the parking attendants, that are here in the parking garages. And really the role, and the takeaway from that, from a civilian and city perspective, is being aware, right, of your surroundings. And although, we all on the city side don't have the means to intervene train and obviously interact the way that sheriff's deputies do, we can play a vital role, right? If we're seeing somebody that's acting suspiciously, is carrying maybe a bag and whatnot. And so kind of understanding from the FBI and from our law enforcement partners what we can do, on the front line as ambassadors, as the security ambassadors, code enforcement staff, parking enforcement staff are all out in the field, right? Every single day. So as they're patrolling, as they're doing their foot patrols, bicycle patrols, what can we do to help all law enforcement partners, right? To provide them with the information. You see something, say something, right? So that was really the intent of our involvement in terms of kind of getting an overview from that perspective. So.
Thank you. And I think that I think it was a miss not to have LGBTQ identified board members or commissioners specifically, especially with this body there. I just want to say that I'm thrilled that you went, and I think that's extremely important, and I'm glad you were there. I understand why everyone wasn't there for kind of the fullness of it, and some of those things are departmental, and that doesn't require other folks, or it maybe shouldn't, but for the initial piece of it, because it leads me to my next question. The tragedy happened in Colorado Springs. We had a vigil. Which is such a severe concern that it now leads to this, which was important, and I'm glad that it happened. But now we have an incident at the #1 gay bar in the world, the most visited, packed bar in this city, and I'd like to know how we're bridging the gap there. So you have an individual that has a gun very shortly after a horrible incident. If we're talking about see something, say something, I want to know what does that look like, because in my mind, and I don't run any of these departments, but in terms of organizing, I would imagine you would have an immediate cry out from, the captain to the entertainment policing folks, bringing in block by block, and then disseminating that information immediately to every single nightclub establishment, putting every single door person, every single club manager or venue manager on alert that this situation is there. I mean, this should have gone way further in my view than it did, and I'm really disappointed and concerned that more steps weren't taken. We don't know what this individual wanted, and unless I'm just going to say, this is why I say it has to be someone that's in the queer community and someone that's a representative, because unless you understand the severity and why that targeting happens, it might be easy to just look at it as a standard thing and not as a potential attack on our community. And so if we don't have it now, I would like to hear more about it, but I don't think we have preparedness plans. I don't think we have systems in place, and I don't think we're activating in a severe enough way. I don't want us to activate after someone comes in and shoots up one of our clubs. I stood on the street and talked about it. We all held each other in community and talked about this. It's a severe issue. So I don't understand how we're having these meetings month after month. We're talking about prevention. We're talking about the LGBTQ community because it's so specific in the nature in West Hollywood. We're talking about additional patrols at nightlife, and thank you for that update. We're talking about why and the importance of that. We're on the heels of a very severe incident, and I'm not hearing any semblance of an activated plan around it. I'm not hearing it from the report about what happened, and I'm not hearing a plan for the future, and I'm gravely concerned about that. And that's what I think needs to go to council. That's what I think people need to start crying out about, because I don't want us to take it seriously when a single one of our community members is a statistic, because it happens. So it doesn't seem to me like there was any type of formulated response that engaged multiple agencies, and I would have think that this situation would have warranted that and even a potential lockdown until we knew things were secure. I'm really disappointed in that. I have other things, but I don't know if you want to respond before I go on, because I've gone on a bit.
We did have multiple agencies responding to that event.
In what capacity?
That evening. We had Beverly Hills responding, we had LAPD responding. All of those agencies were responding to our call for help regarding that incident.
At the venue?
Yes.
And what was the outreach to the other nightlife venues? What was the activation outside of that? Was it just focused on finding the person in the venue?
We were focused on finding that person inside
Right.
that.
Right. So I'm not saying that job and that work wasn't done, and that's not my intention. What I'm saying is, if you can see it from kind of the holistic way that I'm looking at it, right? It's like, okay, this thing happens. We have a fire incident. We look at it. What other things can we do? What's the form of prevention? And sometimes prevention has an immediacy, and that doesn't fall on your shoulders or nor the sheriff department shoulders necessarily. This is about how these departments work together and how we as a city drive this conversation and not just receive it, so far after. So.
Commissioner Steele, if I can add. So actually the city was already prepared, and there was a lot of messaging and coordination in light of what did occur in Colorado Springs. We actually had a press conference this past Tuesday, which included West Hollywood Sheriff Station, block by block ambassadors and city staff. We had our mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Shine also that communicated during that press release. And a part of that messaging, and I know, as you're looking at media reports, you're only getting small clips, right, of what was communicated, but there was an overall plan that was provided as a part of our overall community safety, and that did include, in addition to the entertainment policing team, the city of West Hollywood pays the West Hollywood Sheriff Station to provide, right, extra support at our nightlife establishments. They've also added supplemental patrols, community safety holiday patrols, as well as coordinating through our supplemental law enforcement program, foot beats. I know some of the commissioners have obviously seen deputies that have been out and about, right, providing foot beats and other patrols. And so that concentration, though, in light of that, has triggered more frequent patrols and presence in the Rainbow District, as well as other nightlife establishments. In addition to that, we've also adjusted our block-by-block security ambassadors to provide the same in terms of increasing that presence. So all of that happened, right, obviously prior to Thursday. When we learned of the situation in Colorado Springs, we automatically made those adjustments. The vigil, that is actually when it began. And I can tell you that on Thursday, at least my understanding in terms of speaking with the captain of the West Hollywood Sheriff Station and other West Hollywood Sheriff Station staff, that, they responded the way that it was intended. The entertainment policing team was there, supplemental patrols and other agencies were all a part of that. My understanding is there's not enough information that leads anybody to believe that there was a target in any way or a focus. But obviously the details of that can't be shared because it's an ongoing investigation. And the venue was cleared. There was no firearm. The person that allegedly was seen wasn't there at the establishment, right? And so the investigation continues. And so we are on high alert, and kind of in response to what you just mentioned and some of the other commissions is we are coordinating a meeting with our nightlife establishments. Even prior to that, that was already a part of the plan to provide them with a future and more than likely very recent active shooter training, and then having that discussion in terms of what they could be doing to be better prepared. And so the City of West Hollywood a couple of years ago did work in partnership with the station to also put together a nightlife establishments handbook. It is offered on our city's website. It can be downloaded, and it covers a variety of different things. So that is going to be a part of the conversation, as well as the mention that Sergeant Yost had made in terms of getting the temperature of some of the nightlife establishments, of whether or not they would entertain utilizing metal hand wand detector or potentially making other steps, right, at the front entrance, which many of the establishments don't do currently, right? And so if there was a patron that did access the venue or any other venue that was carrying a firearm, right, that would obviously be a clear deterrent, right? They would be seeing security staff at their front entrance, right, doing what they need to do, checking whether they're using the metal detector, hand wands, et cetera. And so we've already been in communication. We plan on having that meeting next week, and that will be held in partnership with the West Hollywood Sheriff Station. So,
can you bring up what Commissioner Steele mentioned, as well as what I actually experienced? One of a famous nightclub, the security guards out front had no idea that this just happened an hour and a half ago. Some sort of rapid communications that at least they can opt into, that Nixle at least, or something else that's fast, that they are all aware of what's going on.
I mean, I agree with Commissioner Steele and Berger. What happened in Colorado Springs is a tragedy. That was a standalone bar. In West Hollywood, we are a cluster of bars, one on top of the other. So an unfortunate incident could happen very quickly where someone could run from bar to bar to bar and do a tremendous amount of damage. So I think we need to be more vigilant, somehow letting staff, security know at all the establishments, code red, something is happening at the Abbey. So if they need to shelter in place, they're ready and aware.
Chair, I mean, that's part of the communication that we're going to be having with them. And, you know, I know the entertainment policing team does frequent, you know, all of these nightlife establishments every weekend, even during the evenings of every day. So, you know, I know they're communicating. They have an excellent rapport with the business establishments. And so if there's ways to improve in terms of that communication, but I can tell you that that following day, I was on a number of phone calls with business owners and managers, because similar to some of the commissioners, I have an excellent communication and rapport with these businesses, and they do reach out, right, regarding concerns, et cetera. So please know that the city of West Hollywood does take it very serious, had already had a plan in place, and my understanding is that plan was executed, and fortunate enough, nothing occurred, and it's still being investigated. So we'll continue to proceed, taking all the input and feedback that we value from every commissioner, and then move forward with communicating that with our businesses, working in conjunction with the chamber, et cetera.
Danny, I had attended an active shooter training maybe 3 years ago, and it was open to the public. And I think the priority needs to be, of course, our nightlife establishments. I think we need to invite other businesses, but I think we also need to invite the public. We are a target because of the LGBTQ community, but we are also, none of us, nobody is, I mean, it happened in my family in Parkland. And it's really important that anybody gets this training, and that every one of us understands the risks anywhere we are, whenever we're here in the city. And I just think it's tremendous that you guys did this training, and you did it quickly. The more people we can make it available to, the more we get the word out and people have their eyes open.
Especially because the active shooters that have been stopped, most of them have been by just a person that was in there. So that's happened a lot. They're the people that are right there, and it's within seconds.
Can we annualize active shooter training? I mean, I hate to say that, it sounds horrible, but I think we have to, and I think we need to time it and have it on the calendar as a regular part of maybe our plan in the city, and have the tiers of, you know, the law enforcement training to see what's happened in the last year, any new insights, the nightlife establishments, you know, the rest of the business community, and then allow, you know, or invite anybody else, the public, to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the focus right now is to get with the businesses, to get folks prepared, right, and to share those methods and those techniques and what they can do. Every venue, every establishment is different in terms of their ingress, egress, right, their layout, their floor plans, right, and so that's where we rely on our experts at the West Hollywood Sheriff Station and other partners to come in, kind of meet with them, not just in general. We can give an overview with the active shooter, but we want to get even a little more granular in terms of getting specific, meeting with individual venues, of course, those that we know have a higher capacity and occupancy load, right, to allow them to be better prepared and their security staff. But I think what you had mentioned is something that we already planned for. Let's concentrate on the venues, the entertainment establishments, and then, of course, you know, offer a training that's open to the public as well, because I think that's essential and it's important.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just wanted to add to that. I know that the kinds that have been done are kind of limited in the number of participants if they're the hands-on training. But if there's perhaps a way to create more of a scalable version of that where it can be done in chambers or in a bigger venue, where it's more of a lecture format, that I think would be helpful to Commissioner Berger's point about the people on the scene, the civilians on the scene being the first to be able to respond. I believe that the current model of training is run, hide, fight. Is that still what's being taught? And that I think is a kind of information that, if we can't do the multiple trains it would take to train so many members of the public, a PowerPoint and lecture, I think, would be helpful.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to circle back. I, again, want to reiterate and be very clear. I'm not saying the city has no plan. I'm not saying no one's doing their job. I'm not saying those things aren't covered. What I'm saying, and I'll repeat it to be clear, is what I think we're missing is bridging the gap of immediate information and disseminating that information immediately, because nothing that was just said has answered that or checked that box for me, right? And so whether or not, there's any of these things that happen, which I think are extremely important, the press conference, letting the public know, having the training, again, I support that. None of that is going from club to club to club to let them know. Clearly, there was a description of the person. Clearly, we called in other agencies. If we had nothing to go on, I mean, what could we all have been looking for, right? There must have been a description of this person. If there's a description enough to pass on to other law enforcement and to bring them in, then that's description enough to pass on to every door person at every venue in this city. We're not checking that box, right? We're moving past it. I'm not going to let us move past it. That needs to be sorted out. We need to figure out how that happens. And I'm not putting that on one person. I'm saying we're not covering the bases there, especially when it comes to exactly what Commissioner Berger mentioned and what Commissioner Oliver reiterated in terms of just bystanders. We're not even giving people a chance. We're not giving people a chance when we don't disseminate this information. We had someone as recently as the National Trans Visibility March that was standing there and just screaming hate speech for quite a while, and I ended up physically walking up and body blocking this person from a trans woman. I'm 90 pounds, well, actually I used to be, but the point is I don't know what that looks like, right? We don't know where that person's going to go, but these are serious, serious threats to community, and you don't know when that person is going to flip that switch and when it's going to turn from someone spewing hate speech in a park to that person being in our bars. You don't know if it wasn't him. We just don't know. So I appreciate the support, and I just want to reiterate that I would like to see added to the preparedness systems and services. These are all city vendors. These are all contracted vendors. Block by Block, I think, is the perfect immediate resource. In that way, the sheriff's doing what they're doing. The deputies are doing their job. They're working with other avenues. Why not call in Block by Block, get them out to every nightclub immediately, and give a description out to those businesses? It's a simple solve, it seems to me, but it's not about finger pointing, it's about prevention. So that's all I had. I had things on other items, but you can tell me.
And I think this was a very important dialogue that we've had. It's critical, but I think if we're good, no more additional questions for Sergeant Yost, we can move on.
I had one more thing that I did not say, and I noticed that your arrests have gone up 35% in the last year, and that's great. And, I'm assuming that we've got people who are committing crimes, and it sounds like you're doing a lot more foot patrols, so I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for that.
I did have just a couple other things about other items that were shared. The scooter incident that happened, it says that there was not a citation. Do we know why there wasn't a citation for the scooter incident that was listed? The scooter accident on November 27th with the bird scooter, where they caused the scooter caused a collision by operating on the sidewalk.
That I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Okay. I know the scooters, it's been such a hot topic, and I'm in support of them. But I think, unfortunately, when folks do that stuff, I'd like to see them actually get the citation, because we have to start letting people know, you're giving them all a bad name and a bad rep, and you're causing harm to the community. So I don't know how to get that answer, but maybe if we can crack down on that. I know I don't usually say that, but and then also just the only other thing that I had was the thank you for the update on the drink spiking incidents. I appreciate that. Can we get an updated annual report on that, Danny, whenever that's possible, on the just drink spiking?
Yes,
I think you
absolutely,
said January,
Commissioner
right?
Still. Well, actually, as a part of the semi-annual public safety update, that is going to be information that's going to be provided in there, but we haven't yet received the full, complete report yet. But I'll go over that during that item in 8F. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, do we know if the one rape, I know I had asked for underneath where it says rape here to have drink spiking assault listed. I'd like to just reiterate that ask. And do we have information on the one rape that occurred? Do we know if that was a drink spiking related incident or no?
I don't know what,
Okay.
I don't have the info on that.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Sergeant Jost.
Thank you.
Again, happy holidays. Please be safe, you and our Sheriff's Department. Item 8C, our report from our block-by-block security ambassadors.
Manager Block, here to give the November report. So for the month of November, we were really trying to concentrate on the residential patrols, West, Center City, and East Side. We've added a DTEX component to the residential patrols, which is just to keep the ambassadors on task and to ensure that they're visiting the areas and locations that they're assigned to. We've also been working on building on opportunities and more ways to have the kiosk ambassadors even more engaging with the public. I think they're doing a good job, but there's always room for improvement. We participated in a block-by-block photo shoot arranged by Director Rivas for the new publications. We moved around the city to some primary locations: Gateway and Formosa, Plummer Park, Ramada, and Kitchen 24, Robertson, WeHo Park, Sunset Plaza, Sunset Spectacular, Roxy and Whiskey A Go-Go for patrols. We also had scheduled training arranged by Director Rivas for the UCLA RTC training on sexual assault, additional training on active shooter situation, due in part to the extremely unfortunate Pulse nightclub shooting. And also we conducted some in-house retrainings on sensitivity, unhoused resident contact, and de-escalation practices. And besides that, it was pretty much business as usual for the ambassadors in the month of November. Do I have any questions from anyone?
Commissioners, any questions?
How is your? I've had some complaints from block by block, which I've never had before, and I think it's probably due to your training a lot of the new people. How is that coming?
It's going well. You know, some of the individuals that I felt were not working out correctly, you know, we've separated ways and replaced them with new people that we're training now. I want to have the best possible staff out there to keep you guys as safe as possible and informed as possible.
Thank you. Okay.
I have two things. One is at the city council meeting, there was a person who spoke about an attack that occurred on a trans woman, and block by block was, I guess, nearby. And this vendor, I think he's a local hot dog vendor, mentioned that he shouted and nobody helped. My question would be the following. What kind of training do people on your team get when they encounter someone fighting? It could be a domestic situation. It could be people who don't even know each other. What are they to do in that situation? Because I don't think it's safe for them to go get involved, but just curious because I know it came up at the council meeting and I've never asked, so.
So we typically don't get involved physically. We do try to use de-escalation techniques, try to get the parties to calm down, see if we can get them to go their separate ways. But if we're experiencing acts of violence, we get the sheriff department involved immediately.
Okay. I don't know if anyone's followed up with you about that, but it might be good to talk to that vendor. He comes to the meetings. I don't know his name. I apologize. But if you watch the meeting, he's on there, and he's a city resource. He comes to meetings. He'd probably let you know what he saw, and you can maybe discuss it with him.
Yes, we've been in contact.
Okay, good. And then just any surprises or things that you're finding as you have more people out and going out into residential streets?
Nothing yet surprising, and if it is a surprise, I hope it's a good one. But nothing yet surprising. We're basically running into the same issues. Things that we do are pretty repetitive. So I'm just hoping that we're getting better at what we're doing than getting worse, right? So there's nothing that's off kilter for right now that I can report.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for block by block?
Yeah, I think just one. I was thrilled to hear about all of the training and the Rape Center training, so I'm really glad that's underway. I know that's been in the plan. And those of us that have had to hire people in a large capacity or in that way understand turnover and all this, all of us do, all the providers do, I'm sure. So I appreciate you recognizing that and doing what we have to do to get that sorted. My only question is, as it relates to something I addressed earlier, which was utilizing block by block to support areas when there's a power outage or a situation. So is that something where if we had the mechanism, and I don't know what that is, and I'll leave that with Director Rivas and the team, but if there was a mechanism for us to do that and say, hey, we know that this particular block's got a power outage, it's, looks like it's going to be 4 hours, we all know that could be 8 or what have you, and there's multiple businesses, et cetera, could you adjust your team's routes to add additional support just for visibility on whatever kind of rotation would make sense?
Yeah, I can definitely would be able to arrange something. In our recent power outage, I did receive a notification from Director Rivas to have more patrols in those areas, so that's what we did.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I guess the only other question is it looks like some of the unhoused resident contact has gone down. Is that just not as many kind of calls or outreach, or am I reading that wrong?
No, it's just those numbers kind of ebb and flow, right? Depending on the seasonality, the weather conditions, and things like that.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on, commissioners? All right, well, thank you, Mr. Gibson. You have a wonderful holiday as well.
Thank you, and you as well. Thank you all.
Item 8D, request tracking and the commission calendar. Commissioners, does anyone wish to speak on this item?
Chair, if none of the commissioners, I do just want to highlight just a couple of aspects. Maybe Margarita, if you can go up to the next page, please. The page prior. Page 2, sorry. Page 2, yeah. And scroll down a little bit more to where it says 11:14. There we go. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, I know in the last commission meeting, commissioners did ask regarding fire prevention and communication, right, in light of the holiday season, et cetera. And I believe, there was some discussion, obviously, with the chief as well concerning that. So I just wanted to highlight that shortly thereafter, we did work with our communications department and Los Angeles County Fire Department, and we did put out a press release of information that they shared with us, and we did send that out. I did also email that to all of the commissioners as well, just informing you all that that press release had been sent. And then in addition, we had our discussion for the second time, the multi-stall gender-neutral restrooms item that came to the commission last month and the month prior. And so as a part of that discussion, right, the commission certainly wanted to make sure that communication was relayed to the city council regarding your input and feedback. And so that was done in coordination during last council meeting on December 5th, this past Monday. And so I also did forward that on over to all the commission in terms of just making sure that you were aware that that was completed and done. Margarita, if you can just scroll down to the next page. Great. And so we do have some other items, obviously, that are still in the works. So the pickpocketing study session memo that the commissioners provided input and feedback on, the plan is on December 19th, which is the next city council meeting, that we are going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be sending that to the city council no differently than we did on prior memos. And then I will, of course, send an email to all the commission informing you all that that had been sent. But the memo is ready to go. We obviously received all the input and feedback that we needed and the direction that we needed at that time. So I just wanted to make mention of that. And then that is the reason why you're seeing that listed as in progress, but that will be completed obviously after December 19th and our next commission meeting that we meet. There's also the nighttime safety study session. We have all of the information as well that we needed in regards to that. That item will be going to the city council on December 19th as well. December 19th overall is going to be more or less kind of dedicated more so towards community safety. There will be some other items, but that is going to be a focal point. And so we're certainly going to be making sure that it's reflected not only in the staff report, but it'll also be sent at the commission's request via email or through a memo. And then I'll make sure to notify all the commissioners in terms of that as well. And I believe the rest of the requests here have all been complete. So I know the last one here that you're seeing, the 6-month public safety update, that's on the agenda this evening. That's the semi-annual public safety update. So I'll be going over that shortly with the commission.
Thank you, Director Rivas. Moving on to item 8E, Commission Work Plan. Commissioners, does anyone care to speak on our work plan item?
Chair, I'm sorry, just one thing on the calendar. I just wanted to mention as well that the commission did agree last meeting to cancel our January meeting. Obviously, we're having our special meeting this evening for December, so I just wanted to make mention of that as well.
Okay, thank you. So any comments on our commission work plan?
Yes, but I need 20 seconds. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to contribute on the work plan?
So one of the things I think, and this came up when we reviewed the minutes, is we know that there are ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys in certain types of crime. We talked about the rapes, and I think it should be inserted in our calendar or our work plan that educational sessions leading up to October and to Pride, we should probably somehow designate that there's special focus on community communication or something of that sort, just to make sure that it's in here. That's what I'd like to see on the calendar.
Okay. And Commissioner Steele?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Vice Chair Valbonne. I think that's great. There were a couple things that I had sent over that were ongoing work plan items that I wanted to be assigned to, like tasks that I want to be assigned to, if that's appropriate. So can I just share those with you and then let me know what the process is, I guess?
Sure.
Is that?
So I added the item of work plan, and I know we discussed at the last commission meeting, the meeting prior. The commission, my understanding from the direction that we discussed is that we were going to have a more in-depth discussion when the full commission was in place and whether or not there was going to be new appointments, et cetera, to the Public Safety Commission. So happy to hear Commissioner Steele and any other commissioner in terms of that feedback, and happy to update this. And I know we've been kind of pushing it along. I am more than open to opening the document up right now as we speak, going over every single one of these, if that's the will of the commission, and adding updated, because I do see a lot of things on here that probably need to be updated or removed or changed or modified, or do we wait until February to go through it? But if Commissioner Steele or any other commissioner thinks that today's more appropriate to maybe add things to that, open to that as well, if that's the will of the commission.
My recommendation as chair is that we table this until we are a full body. I think we need all commissioners present when we have this discussion so everyone is up to speed.
I agree.
I agree. I just have a question. I guess let me ask a quick question then. So are we confirmed that all appointees will in fact be appointed to be joining in February, or no?
Great question, Commissioner Steele, because that's something that's come up. I mean, we just had our business license commission meeting that was asked as well. I don't know is the answer. We obviously have some new council members that are going to be coming on. They're going to be sworn in on December 19th. Council members can begin to start making appointments then, or they can wait until January, or they can wait until February, to your point, which is traditionally when, right, the entire organization for advisory board. So I don't know at this point, but I have not heard anything yet. But if I do, certainly let everybody know. I do think, though, Commissioner Steele, like whatever it is that you would like to incorporate, I would like to hear it, or any other commissioners, even as it relates to the work plan, because we can take the notes. And then when we have that discussion in February, when it's the full body, we don't have to keep reiterating, right, the same information. I think it's helpful for us from staff. So.
Yeah, I think I agree with Chair in terms of the body. And my only concern is that because council can appoint at will and they can delay it. And so I don't want, we're here to do this work now. And so I guess in terms of revising the work plan with the new body, that makes all the sense in the world. But there's some stuff that I think maybe we can continue to move on. And we've also done a lot, so I think we continue to. I'll just list for you the things that I had noted, and these may be things that you all think make sense to push, and I'm fine with that. I'll just list them for you. But these are the things that I was interested in, excuse me, talking about. One is assigning a commissioner to assist particularly vulnerable populations interact with law enforcement, including but not limited to immigrants, sex workers, persons experiencing homelessness, and others. I think we've seen enough instances in the past few months that it makes sense. So that was something I was interested in doing for the body. And then assisting staff with developing a working plan for managing animals during a disaster. Did that happen? I feel like somewhere somebody was talking about an animal disaster plan. Did that happen, or am I?
We had a discussion. I don't know that it got fully documented.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was one, because I felt like that was one we could probably, whether it's a subcommittee or however that works, that's something we could check off pretty quickly, right? Like we can get a plan together and work with the appropriate bodies. The other is identifying trainings that may benefit first responders, staff, or commissioners. And that may make sense with the new body, but and then there were two other things. One is review information on complaints that go directly to the sheriff's department and bypass the city. I haven't heard or seen anything of that nature, and I don't know if that's happening or.
I can speak to that. We did get a report at one point from Captain Mulder, but it's been a while, and it should be probably scheduled and annualized. And the other thing that we discussed is we specifically point out law enforcement, but we should really be looking at this for any of our public safety entities, right? I mean, we've got block by block, we've got the fire department, we've got the sheriffs, anybody who gets a complaint. And we might want to flip that around to also praise. You know, I know we did one highlight on the child's life who was saved by the sheriffs, but you know, we have both, and I think we should be looking at both, and there should be a keen focus, of course, on complaints. You have to address those, but it shouldn't just be law enforcement, it should be any entity that we have in the city that's reinforcing public safety.
Yeah. So I guess just the question is, what's the appropriate action for some of those? Director Rivas and Chair and Vice Chair, is it, I've never heard of a subcommittee on this body. Is that even appropriate for this body? What's the best way with some of these to move forward?
Well, Director Rivas, now that Commissioner Seals' requests have been put into record, is it possible to add these items in so when we are full body, hopefully in February, that we have a more complete plan to discuss?
Yeah, certainly. I did send out the Word document for the work plan, which is on the screen, and requesting from the commissioners to make any sort of track changes within the document and send them back to me, or if it's easier to send an email to me and reflecting what page, I'm certainly happy to enter that into the document as well. I think the complaint was to Vice Chair Balbone's statement. My understanding is it was addressed by Captain Mulder in terms of kind of outlining the different avenues and availability for folks to report complaints. But you know, we can certainly look back at that, and if there's more information that needs to come to the commission, we can do that. You know, as well as with our other public safety partners. In terms of that. So, you know, if there is something, and I'm just going to speak for city staff, not for our contract partners, but I know that their process is similar. You know, if it's personnel related, you know, that is something that is kept confidential. Obviously, getting the reports and the information is one thing and passing that on, but that's not something that would be discussed during the Public Safety Commission meeting. That would be followed through right by that body. So, for example, if somebody was complaining about a code enforcement officer, right, they would report that to the city, and then we would go through our investigative process, and then any sort of action that would be taken, again, is not something that would be divulged because it is personnel related and is confidential. So, so I just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention too. But we can certainly look at that and have that information provided back.
Yeah, I think for that, I'm not really sure. I don't know if we have any information on the number of complaints that happen with any of these bodies. I think maybe that's a good starting point, is to find out, do we know over maybe 2021, 2022, like a year over year of what complaints have been received, or even number. And the reason is, I don't know that it makes sense to annualize it or make it a monthly report. Like if it's there's immediacy, and someone had mentioned a complaint earlier, I think those are more immediate things, right? And obviously things that are confidential or personnel, I wouldn't expect us to engage on. But if there is a pattern of a particular type of a thing or what have you, I think it's something that would make sense for this body. And then there's two other things that I think should be an active part of the program for this body. One is, and forgive me for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the study, but the bias study that's happening right now with the organization, I think it's out of Canada. They came and did a presentation about basically
Community Safety and Wellbeing Strategy Plan by Strategy Corp, yes, and they're in Canada.
That's the big one, but there was the one bias study that's being done.
Center for Policing Equity.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah. So the Center for Police Equity, we haven't had any further update on that. And when they were last here, there wasn't a full plan dialed in, and we were told we would get one. So I think that needs to be an active conversation. That isn't just kind of comes here like it comes to other bodies. I think that's under the purview of this body. That and again, the municipal police force study, I think, should be an active dialogue with this body.
I think that Sean from CPE came a couple of weeks ago. We didn't know about it, but they spoke with the city council. Is that correct?
That is true. Yeah, they didn't speak. They're part of right now. What they're doing is they're in their engagement, community engagement phase. So they did come and visit West Hollywood specifically. I know that they were reaching out to a couple of different representatives. They actually did meet with Chair Hallman. I don't know whether or not they met with you when they came, but I know they had a discussion just recent prior to that leading up. So there was different representatives from different bodies that were reached out to as a part of that effort. And so, yes, we can certainly provide an update, but right now they're in their community engagement phase. Hopefully that will conclude the end of this month and into the beginning of next month, and then they will be providing a draft report to the city. And so I'll be sure to provide updates, and we can certainly add that to the work plan.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if Chair wants to provide an update on that dialogue. I think for me, when they were here, there really wasn't a community engagement plan, so to speak, and we asked some pretty specific questions about it. And so what I'm hoping is that we can get a more transparent breakdown of what that engagement is, rather than saying community engagement took place over a 90-day time period or something like that. What did that look like? What was that engagement? How was community engaged? Where was community engaged? I think there was a lot of beats that were missing in that dialogue when they were here. One of the things they mentioned was working with the deputies to execute that study, and I don't know how we would ever get a robust answer from community members if one of the bodies in question is doing the dialoguing. So I would like more information about what community engagement means and what a breakdown of that is. And you may have more information on that, Chair, but those are my concerns with it.
So, again, can we make these notes in the work plan and maybe do like some investigating and maybe get some of those answers that Commissioner Steele is just asking for, just so we're all up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and maybe look at inviting them to maybe provide some sort of update to the commission in the near future.
Okay, that would be great. Moving on, I want to be cognizant. All our agenda items are incredibly important. However, it is Friday night at 8 o'clock, and I think everyone's had a long week. So if we can do our best to power through without recklessly overlooking anything, that would be my wish. So item 8F is the semi-annual community safety update. I believe Director Rivas, you're going to do this?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. Danny Rivas, Director of Community Safety for the City of West Hollywood. We're going to be sharing our screen here, and I wanted to just start off by first mentioning I did send an email to the Commission when we released the agenda packet, and this, of course, was not provided yet, and the reasoning being that we are planning to go to the City Council on December 19th with a semi-annual public safety update. That information in terms of crime statistics that you're generally familiar with in terms of getting updates like you did this evening, right? Both from the Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, block by block, right, et cetera. And so that is for a period of 1 month, but what we're trying to capture here, based off of the direction that we received from City Council, is to have from January of this calendar year until the end of November, right, which just passed, the month prior. So that 11th month time frame is something that we've requested our public safety partners to provide a more comprehensive report. We have not done anything of that sort before. Typically what we do, right, is like a January to June, and then you do a July to December. But again, based off of the direction we received from City Council to return back to the City Council to have a discussion about updated crime statistics, also an update in terms of the recent expansion of the block by block security ambassador program. That is the reason why we asked, right, for a more comprehensive report that showcases all of that and then compares that, right, to the prior year. So similar again to what you typically see on a month-to-month basis. And so we still have not yet received that final report. I was hoping to try to get something yesterday and maybe even today, but understanding that, obviously that takes some time to kind of pull in terms of that. But what I did want to do at the request of Commissioner Berger and the rest of the commissioners is get some input and feedback in terms of what you would like to see in the future on these types of reports. As I kind of went back and looked at Public Safety Commission agendas in the past, I actually could not locate a semi-annual or 6-month public safety update on the agenda. It may have been provided, and maybe Vice Chair Balbone or Commissioner Berger, I don't know. And I'm looking to the two of you just because of the long-standing commissioners here on this body. But I was kind of going back, right, because I know it's provided on a month-to-month basis. And I know that the City Council receives that 6-month update, but I wanted to kind of pause and kind of hear from either one of you as to, was this information provided or kind of what was the standard practice in the past?
So what happened at our last November meeting, we had the report and we requested, it came to us kind of with short notice. And then we thought it was so important that we called a special meeting for that, so it would get to our voice would get heard by City Council before their meeting. So I don't remember all of the details. We had some really good commissioners on that group that asked for a lot of specific kinds of information that we could read through, and it was kind of a lot of information. That's why I requested in October that you get this to us sooner, because it was a lot of stuff that we requested last time, and we did it in a short span last time. So that's what we could go over that meeting when we did request all of that information and see exactly what we requested, what kind of reports and everything, because it was really thorough.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I mean, I don't probably expect us to do that this evening, but I know we have new commissioners that are on now compared to the commission body that was on in the past. So if there are specific items or things that you all are looking to be included, certainly let us know. Again, the time frame too, November just concluded, and so as soon as that occurs, obviously these bodies are starting to work on not only providing the monthly reports that they typically provide, but then in addition to that, right now they're working on this more comprehensive report. I did place an attachment, and I don't know if we can go to that attachment to give you all a sample of what is going to be provided, showcasing again this calendar year, month to month, and it will include calls for service. It will include Part 1 crimes, and you're seeing that's on your screen now. And so this is just for this calendar year, again from January, and you're seeing it broken down. The first chart is just reflecting those calls for service that the West Hollywood Sheriff Station has received month to month, and the red arrows obviously signify that there's been an uptake from the month prior, and if you're seeing a green arrow, right, that's showing that we've seen a decrease that month compared to what was experienced the previous month. If you scroll a little further on down, the Part 1 crime, this is total, in total, and so we're seeing definitely from July, August, September, October, and November, it has started to creep up a little bit, but it's definitely nowhere near what it was at the hike in June for this calendar year. We also started breaking down at the request of the commission, right, specific topics in categories within Part 1. So if we scroll on down this document, you will see theft. It doesn't get into the specifics. I know in the chart that's provided by the West Hollywood Sheriff station, it gives you theft, and then underneath theft, right, it'll give you that total number, but then it kind of breaks it down into a couple of different categories. We haven't had the time to do that, but this is just kind of like a high-level overview, right, of theft within the Part 1 crimes. And so you're seeing, again, the trends here. And that's really the intent of the semi-annual, at least, public safety update that we want to propose, is really highlighting the current trends that are being experienced and that are visible to folks. And so we're seeing the last 2 months, they're being steady in terms of crime that's related to theft. The next chart, burglary, is mentioned here, again, at the request. I think, we wanted to highlight theft, right? Burglary, robbery, aggravated assault, pickpockets, as well as rape, and arson. I even went a step further and added arson. We added grand theft auto, which is GTA, on the report. And so you're seeing the trends again here, and it looks, August, September, October, steady in terms of sustainability, in terms of the numbers, and then just, a slight, very slight increase this past month. The next chart, I believe, is robbery. Again, you're seeing actually a decrease for the last 2 months since September. And it looks like September was the highest at 16, but you're seeing that dip. The next chart is the grand theft auto. As I mentioned, on the report that you're seeing, the sheriffs provide, it's notated as GTA. It's abbreviated, but that is what it is referring to there. And so you're seeing the trends as it relates to that. And I believe the next two charts that are on this document, if we scroll on down, is our pickpocket, which was mentioned. And I know we discussed, as we're all looking at kind of the trends, right? We're seeing June really being the spike in a lot of the different areas there. But that is obviously being maintained as well. Slight increase from the previous month, but you're seeing still the work that's being done to curtail that. And then I believe that the last two charts, we have aggravated assault. Again, that was something that was mentioned by the commission to make sure that we were able to kind of capture that and highlight that. And then our final chart here. No, we have one more. We have our chart as it relates to rape, which I know Sergeant Yost had mentioned. One is far too many, and couldn't agree more with that. And so you're seeing, though, the trends as it relates to that. And to Commissioner Steele's point a little earlier, maybe having that dive in a little bit deeper in terms of making sure which one of those are drink spiking related versus not. And then we have arson. Related crimes, and I know that's something that definitely has come up, during our fire department updates and whatnot. But you can just kind of see the different trends that are occurring here. And then one of the other categories that is part of Part 1 crime that's not on here is homicide. And the reason why it's not on here is because it's at 0 for the entire year. So I didn't feel that there was a need to provide a chart, but maybe we should. But I think it's important to at least highlight that to the Public Safety Commission. So this is the type of information that you will be seeing, on hopefully on a more regular basis, but in terms of what the reports that we're going to be looking at, these comprehensive reports that the Sheriff's Department provides us is going to be a little more comprehensive because it's going to be looking at these same categories and also comparing them to the previous year. And a lot of other information that goes into that. So as soon as we have that information, I will be emailing the Public Safety Commission with that info so that you'll have it. It will be going to City Council on December 19th, and then we'll be sure to even add that afterwards. I think at our next agenda, we'll just add it as an update or debrief if the Commission wishes to.
Thank you, Director Rivas. I personally think this presentation is done very well, and I think it reads a lot clearer, at least for me. I'm a visual person where the stats and statistics are laid out very well. I don't know how other commissioners feel, but I think it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, I think if you look at the materials that we got the last time, it was in November, the meeting there, and I can send them to you too through email, the kinds of things that we might not pick up right now, but it was really thorough. We asked for a lot of material as for when we get our reports.
So a couple of things. As Tori outlined, we did have a review of the report last November, but that was the first time we had seen it before it had gone to the commission, as long as I'd been on the commission. So I think this is really good progress. I like the way it's laid out. I, as you know, have sent you samples of my own little configuration that I've done, and I think it just helps people to see, particularly when we have something like pickpocketing, which is a very focused, targeted crime in a certain part of the city, versus the other crimes and what might really be going up and what's really not. So I think it lays it out very well. One thing, because I know that we've seen the arrests increase, it might be worth trending the arrests as well, because I think that's part of any story to the crime reduction we're seeing. And I know that there's multiple factors at play, but I know that our sheriffs have been hard at work, especially with some of the foot patrols starting and some of the pickpocketing operations. So I think that would be good to start to reflect actual arrests as well.
We can certainly do that and create a graph if it's the will of the commission to provide that information. But similarly to these, there's a lot of manual work involved, but it can be done. So.
And one last thing is there were a lot of concerns when there was discussion around, and it even came up here in the commission, and it honestly, in my opinion, did not have a place here. There was a rumor that was started that response times would be purposefully lengthened, and we haven't really seen that. We've seen some changes in response times. So I think response times have a place, even if it's just giving the council an average, because I think it's important to note that we haven't seen a dramatic shift. And it is part of the job for to keep that steady for our citizens.
Yeah, and I do see that categories. I was just pulling up my notes here on the monthly reports. I do see response, emergency, priority, and routine. And I'm looking at the average time. And I know, though, I do know that the department does have set parameters that they need to meet, and each captain of the station, right, is responsible for making sure that they're reviewing and ensuring that the response times are meeting that time frame. So, yeah, we can certainly look at maybe adding that information as well.
I don't know that it needs to be trended monthly, but for sure, just seeing what the year-to-date stats look like would be great. It's something that if I were on the council, I'd want to see.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Director Rivas, are we good with the semi-annual community safety updates? Are we all on the same page?
Yeah, I think the only, if we start to do a report monthly or whatever, quarterly, whatever that looks like for complaints or resolved issues or things like that, I think in the future I'd love to see that included as well. I just think it's important to have a well-rounded picture of all of it, right? I don't know on that note if it's possible to do a report from public safety specifically, like a public safety 6-month commission, like 6-month update, right? Because there's probably, well, there's definitely highlights I'd want to include in here just from my short time of the work that this body has done. And that's not meant to toot the horn of the body. It's meant to say, these are the things that came to us from community. This is how we addressed it, and this is where it went from here. I know there's council reports. I also know those aren't always kind of fully, necessarily vetted. So I don't know if that's something that we can do in addition to this, or if it's a separate thing. But I think it might be good to do like a semi-annual, flavor from the commission, specifically in relation to these topics, because these are brilliantly put together, but they don't tell the story of some of the dialogue. So just a thought. I think there's so much dialogue that happens here and so much thought that I think it would be helpful to do that. So I don't know where that lives. That may not live here, but that's my thought. And then I also just wanted to just thank Director Rivas. I mean, this is beautifully put together. You put so much work into it, and I don't know if community knows that you do most of this directly and by hand, and how much work and time goes into it, but you're genuinely one of the hardest working people that I've ever worked with, so I just want to thank you for all your work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I second that.
I have a question. Are we giving, because council is meeting December 19th, we're not meeting in January, are we giving feedback on just what kind of report we want? Or are we giving feedback on recommendations that we'd like to see with the information that we have now?
I think it's giving recommendations to what you would like to see in the report. It is a pretty tight turnaround time in terms of when I need to submit the report, and as you can see, I still don't have all the information yet, so I'm going to be working over the weekend because my submittal date is actually Monday to go to the City Council. So, but I will definitely be incorporating as much information, but I think looking to the future, we're not looking to have like a January to November, like what you're seeing now. We're just doing this because of the direction, right, that we received from City Council about bringing back an item to have that discussion. But I think we're looking at, for the future, for the next calendar year, what is that going to look like? So I'm interested, Commissioner Berger, to hear, and I will definitely look at the notes from last November in terms of what that looked like in terms of input and feedback. But even in November, I didn't see anything on the agenda that spoke to that. So maybe it was just items from staff.
Special meeting.
Oh, it was a special meeting. Yeah, but even a special meeting is agendized, and so I couldn't locate it, and I'll look again. But I couldn't see anything that's on our files that showed that. But I believe you, so yeah. I know it's somewhere. So, yeah.
So, because we don't have time, and because I have just one main recommendation I think that should come from our body, is to reinstate the entertainment policing teams. In light of the Club Q in Colorado Springs, like Chair Hallman mentioned, we have club upon club upon club. And this recent gun incident, and I think the sentiment came from our commission that if we reinstated them just as a recommendation, the sentiment from us to keep the people safe as possible before City Council's meeting.
So, Commissioner Berger, so there is a current entertainment policing team in place, and actually, as a result of the discussion the City Council had, they actually reinstated one of the deputies to that team. So in June, there was 4 entertainment policing team deputies, and as of July, there was 5. So it actually increased. So we currently do have 5 entertainment policing team deputies that work the evening, right, late evening hours. And then in addition to that, we also have our cops team, which is another special team, but they are during the day shift, more Monday through Friday. And that is supervised by Sergeant Yost. So one of the things that the entertainment policing team did have in the past that I believe was as a result of COVID and the pandemic was they did have at one point a sergeant that also was assigned to the entertainment policing team. So that is the one position that has not been reinstated or brought forth. So, but there is an entertainment policing team.
But Sergeant Yost, last meeting and this meeting, mentioned that that's what they need. They need more personnel. I'd like to hear exactly how many people you need, what positions you need, what you guys believe you need to help keep us more safe. Do we need to hear from you Or is it just, I mean, he's here, he's told us that he did, but he wasn't specific about exactly the personnel that you do need.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate if you want to make a recommendation as a commission for the city council to consider, then that's something that you can discuss and that can be communicated if there's support from the commission in terms of doing so. Yeah, and we can, ultimately it'd be up to the city council to look at those types of decisions and then give direction to staff.
So then if I'm correct, the only position that needs to be filled is the sergeant?
I'm saying that prior to the pandemic, the entertainment policing team had 5 deputies and 1 sergeant, right? Due to the pandemic, my understanding is a sergeant and 1 deputy to that team was removed at that time for budgetary reasons. And so most recently, for this fiscal year in June, that discussion was had by the city council and they reinstated 1 deputy to the entertainment policing team. The rest of the teams have remained intact. We have a service area lieutenant that the city pays additional for, that always has, and that's Lieutenant Fanny Lapkin, who's serving in that role. And then you have a sergeant, who's Sergeant Yost, and you have 5 deputies that are assigned to the cops team, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that are Monday through Friday, day shift. And then you have currently right now 5 entertainment policing team deputies.
Sergeant Yost, would 1 sergeant back be enough, or do you need more? I don't know what you mean when you say you can do better with more personnel.
So I think sergeant for the EPT team would be amazing. It'd be very helpful. I think a dedicated PIO, I know we discussed this evening getting information out. Just like the events the other evening, Sergeant Warren kind of has that collateral, and she was actually on duty that evening. So on top of trying to supervise and make sure everything is happening correctly on that scene, she's trying to also send out that information. So she's doing multiple roles. If we had an assigned PIO, that would be very helpful. Another thing I believe in, we have several events throughout the city, constantly event after event after event. Planning those events require paperwork on our side. We have to pre-plan out a tactical plan for those. We don't have anybody that does that, so a lot of that falls on me or the cops team or the EPT team, requiring those guys to kind of help out and fill those holes.
Could you get by with just a sergeant and a PIO?
Yeah, we could get by, yeah, absolutely. More is always better, but yes, we could get by definitely with those 2. That would be very helpful.
Okay, I mean, I would like to make the recommendation, just the sentiment that they have to reinstate the sergeant and a PIO. And you can always dial it back if everything gets under control, but just right now in the current climate as well. And I think it would help our publicity as well as a city, because some people might be a little bit worried, especially right now.
Well, I do agree with Commissioner Berger, and in lieu of some of our items that we've discussed this evening, it just makes common sense that I think we make that recommendation to council for those 2 positions, because we have an amazing sheriff's department, but they're only as good as the manpower that they have. And I think we need to do our best to make sure that they are fully staffed.
I would want to see data to support. I mean, arrests are up 35%. Crime is down in a lot of the areas. And I don't know that we have nightlife crime statistics that support additional personnel. I think we can't respond to emotion, we have to respond to a situation. And I would need to, for me, I would want to know, what does that mean specifically? And I mean very specifically. What is that sergeant going to do? What is that outreach? What is that communication? How does that address any of the things that we've addressed tonight? Because what happens in some of the scenarios is you say, okay, well, there's a problem. Oh, well, hire someone. Okay, that's not addressing the problem. Okay, the problem is very specific. The need to address the problem is very specific. And I don't know that we have data at all to support the need for additional nighttime sergeant without knowing what that role is. What is that role, and what specific nightlife crime incidents are we addressing? How is this person going to help address that? What is the specificity here? And even with the PIO, what does that look like? How does that affect all of the things we're saying that aren't being addressed? What is the game plan there? Because another body doesn't always fix everything if that body isn't put forward in a way that addresses things with specificity. So I don't think we're anywhere near knowing there's a need for it or having information enough to support it. That's not saying I would be supportive if we knew the need, what the need was and what the specificity of the roles were. But if you said to me right now, add another deputy, I would say, why? I don't know why. The crime is...
Oh, if I'm correct, that sergeant was in place at one time prior to COVID.
So I'm going to make a recommendation. It is 8:30, and one of the things that this commission had a lot of problems with is a decision was made to make a request previously that wasn't fully analyzed. I agree with Jackie that we have to be very specific in what problem we're trying to solve. I know we are all focused on a heightened sense of security in the community. I don't know that recommending adding people back at this point makes a lot of sense. Perhaps the thing that we need to request is, based on the heightened sense of frustration, need, focus, threat, that we do some type of very focused analysis. And I do think we've called out very specifically at this meeting, information sharing and dissemination of information across the city and to the public needs reinforcement. And if that means a PIO, I don't know. That might be a solution, but I think that's one area that we would need to put in the report, recommending opportunities for reinforcing that, whether it be the city or the sheriff or some combination of both. I would be prepared to make a recommendation of that sort. I don't know that I have enough information to say 2, 3, 4 people, but I think we have topics that we would say, we think there's needs for process review and potentially resources in these spaces, and communication across the city and information dissemination seems to be one of them.
Is this a discussion that's better suited for when we're in budget recommendations?
Yeah, it is, and thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I certainly wanted to hear from the entire commission, but you know, the making recommendations in terms of the financial aspect of the budget and positions is not something, you know, at this time that we're looking to gather or was a part of this item specifically. So, you know, we wanted to concentrate more on the statistical data. What of that data are we looking at to make improvements as a part of the semi-annual? So certainly appreciate everybody's input and feedback as it relates to that. But, you know, I think that's something that can be certainly discussed at a later time with the commission. But ultimately, the city council will be looking at all of our community safety elements. You know, we're going to be giving the block by block expansion update. We did that in September. That's when we received that direction from the city council to return back at the end of the year with a more updated crime statistical information so that they could be evaluating and looking at, you know, our law enforcement contract.
Okay, so we're going to go on pause then with this for a moment and circle back.
Can I make a recommendation on this? I don't know how you include this in the report, but this kind of ties to what Jackie recommended, and it ties to the conversation we just had. This commission worked very hard with you to create tracking of everything that comes to this commission, whether or not we've received the information, when we got it, what our action was. If someone comes and speaks to us and there's follow-up, we're tracking it diligently. And I think that needs to be shared with the council, that is active and it's being done. And, you can provide them a sample or just show them, because we were part of some of the concern that was raised, and we're also part of the solutions. So I think that's a way to get at that and highlight it. And I do think we've talked extensively that if anyone wants our opinion on an area of improvement, there's so much information flowing out in the community, direct information flowing better through the city to our businesses and to residents from our public safety apparatus is a spot that we think needs improvement, both because we're under threat, but also there's so much information out there, and some way to continue to look for ways to disseminate it swiftly and promptly seems to be something that we've talked a lot about tonight. And even just highlighting it in that way and saying, hey, next up, this is what we think we need to attack.
Absolutely, Vice Chair. Yes. I'll
would
make
like
sure
to
to communicate that.
Point out, there are 31 minutes left in the time that we agreed as a body that we would limit to, and we have a presenter who's been waiting very patiently, and unless anybody wants to make motions in 30 minutes to extend the meeting, I think we should really move on.
No, I think we need to move on. I mean, I think everyone's points have been heard, and we have a clear directive of what we need to do. So moving on to item 9A on the agenda is a Coalition for Economic Survival, CES, on the work and services they provide to West Hollywood residents. I believe we have in Zoom Eugene Maskey, who's going to give us a brief overview and summary of how this division works.
Eugene, please unmute yourself by pressing star 6.
And Eugene, thank you for your patience.
I'm sorry for my voice. I swear I'm not Freddy Krueger. I just sound like him. I'm battling COVID, unfortunately, but this meeting was too important to miss it, so I actually wanted to do this presentation for this commission for a while. Chair Holman, Vice Chair Balbone, Commissioners, City staff members, thank you for welcoming me into your meeting and allowing me to provide you with the update on the work we do. My name is Eugene Maskey, and I'm a tenant outreach organizer for Coalition for Economic Survival, CES. We are a 49-year-old multiracial, multicultural, grassroots, community-based nonprofit organization assisting, organizing, and empowering low and moderate income renters in West Hollywood, Los Angeles, and Southern California. CES helped create City of West Hollywood, led the effort to win rent control laws in West Hollywood and Los Angeles, and most of the local laws that protects tenants to this day. And we achieved all that only because of the participation of tenants. That's why we encourage all tenants in West Hollywood to become CES members and join 6,000 plus tenants all over Southern California, because we believe in standing up for each other, and that power is in numbers. As in previous 49 years, our focus this year is on issues like protecting rent control, combating slum housing conditions, stopping unjust evictions and displacement of tenants, protecting neighborhoods against gentrification, preserving government-assisted low-cost housing, eradicating housing dangers, for example, exposure to lead paint poisoning, and advocating for new affordable housing through political and legislative initiatives, and many others. I actually very much appreciate this chance to address the Commission and bring your attention to some of the most critical problems that we are battling in our community recently in terms of tenancy, including growing attempts of unlawful evictions and lots of cases of tenant harassment. I'm currently working with a lot of cases where long-term rent-stabilized tenants are being pushed out of their tenancy by all means necessary. We're talking about low-income, disabled, elderly tenants, and tenants being discriminated because of their age, gender, disability, race, sexual orientation, national origin, health condition, and other situations. In the past year, we've had cases when several landlords went as far as filing frivolous lawsuits in civil court as one of the scare tactics to force tenants out. And of course, they still deploy all these but goodies like intimidation, denial of repairs and maintenance, cash for keys, harassment, decrease of services, and many others not so obvious tricks, but they still unfortunately work. What do we do to help? In collaboration with the City of West Hollywood, CES is doing monthly town hall educational Know Your Rights forums via Zoom, where representatives from the City Rent Stabilization Division and CES talk about most important current issues and answer tenants' questions. Our next educational forum is going to be Monday, December 19th at 6 p.m. So please, everybody who have time, join us and recommend it to all the tenants. In the past 12 months, due to growing demand for information, help, and legal support, we've added second legal clinic for West Hollywood. So now every Wednesday at 6 p.m., we have an exclusive West Hollywood CES Tenants' Rights Zoom clinic where anybody can register online and get a free one-on-one consultation with the best tenants' rights attorney via Zoom from the comfort of their home. And this touches actually on accessibility for residents who previously weren't able to attend clinic, and I will come back to accessibility in a moment. And of course, we're continuing our traditional Saturday CES Tenants' Rights Zoom clinic at 10 a.m. every Saturday with more attorneys and more language support options. We are now provide services in 5 languages, including Russian, Spanish, Farsi, and Hebrew. Again, talking about growing accessibility. Usually I'm doing the intake with tenants before the clinic and following up with them after the consultations with attorneys to help realize the advice that they receive and connect them to city divisions like code compliance, rent stabilization, or services like mediation or social services, or other nonprofit organizations that I've been actively building relationship with, like Housing Rights Center, National Congress of Jewish Women, JFS, Trans Latina Coalition, WehoWorks, JVS, LGBT Center, APAIT, St. John's Community Health, and many others. We also have an ability to provide tenants with a direct referral to Bad Sadik, a legal firm contracted with the City of West Hollywood to provide free legal services, including full representation if they require it. When tenants need to file a tenant harassment complaint or fill out the rent decrease form or find additional help with their rent payments, I'm guiding them through that process on the phone or through the emails, depends on how comfortable they feel, helping them to fill out the forms and collect the documentation and required evidence. This is one of the services that we started providing last year. CES also provides special accommodations during tenants associations, Zoom meetings, and tenants' rights Zoom clinics, including live transcription services for our hard of hearing tenants. Also, all this touches on important issue of accessibility, and I would like to mention that our services have easy accessibility via Zoom or cell phone or tablet or even a landline. From the comfort of tenants' homes, they can connect to our clinics and receive our services. We're also constantly working on making considerable efforts when it comes to the digital divide and monolingual communities, and making sure that all residents can access our services. And because I mentioned a lot of problems in the beginning of this presentation, let me give you a few of the victories we had in the past year. As of right now, we've created more than 10 tenants associations in the buildings that work to unite and protect tenants. In one of the buildings, Tenants Association, with the help of CES, successfully won a battle to make the management install ADA-approved hand railings for the disabled tenants, restore reducted cleaning and maintenance services, and perform paintings and repairs according to West Hollywood ordinances. In another building, we've had a 2-year-long battle with tenants harassment, no on-site building manager, and multiple health hazards and code violation issues. After tenants became members of CES and created a tenants association, we worked on collecting more than 500 pieces of evidence that were presented to legal and rent stabilization divisions of the city, which resulted in the investigation and action. Tenants finally got one of the founding members of the Tenants Association installed as their new building manager, who hit the ground running and has been working on solving problems nonstop ever since. But we still have a lot of work to do. So if you know or hear about anybody who needs our help, please connect them to us. Please connect them to me. It's very easy to register for Wednesday and Saturday clinics. All they need to do is send an email to helpingviehorenters@gmail.com. helpingviehorenters@gmail.com. And I believe you actually have the flyers for the clinics. You can find all that information there. Or they can call directly to my personal line, 213-252-4411, extension 205. I actually pick up my phone. And also, we just launched our new updated website, cesinaction.org. cesinaction.org. You can just get a lot of very helpful resources there. Thank you so much for letting me into your space to provide you with this update on the work CES does on a daily basis for the residents of West Hollywood. And now I'm ready to answer your questions.
Okay, great, Eugene. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sorry you're not feeling well. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions? And with that being said, let's be mindful of the time and move this along. So
I just want to, excellent, Eugene. I especially that people, I've been one of the tenants that's been this situation. And it's excellent that you're making this available on Zoom and you're accessible. Staff, I don't know if you have his contact information, if you can put it up on the screen for the people to see. I just really like how you're doing this because it's scary for tenants to be facing a landlord who seems to know the laws, and the tenants don't know the laws, and they get intimidated. I've seen it, and I've been a tenant in that situation, so I think that's important, the way that you're doing it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And to be honest with you, this is why we are here. This is why I am here, to actually inform tenants of their rights and make sure that they are not scared of the landlords. Because tenants who lived in our city for a very long time don't have to be intimidated by somebody who just came here yesterday into our city, bought a building and decided, oh, let me get rid of all these RSO tenants because I just want to raise the rent 3 times. No, it doesn't work like that. We have our rules and we have our laws that protect our tenants. And we actually have one of the best, and I believe best in the country, one of the best in the world, tenant harassment ordinances that our city council passed, I believe, August 18 last year. So this is very important that we actually inform tenants that these services are available to everybody, that we are available in many different shapes of forms. They can do it from the comfort of their home. They don't have to go anywhere. Now the pandemic is on the rise, unfortunately, again. So they can just do it safely from their home.
Any additional questions for Eugene?
No, just thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eugene, for being patient and hanging in there with us. I know it's been a long week and a long night.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this chance to actually present this information to you. And if you know anybody, we have the flyers, please give the information so people can connect and get help. Thank you and have a good night.
All right, thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Moving on, item 10, any updates from you, Director Rivas, or have we covered everything?
We certainly did cover a lot, yeah. But I just have one update. Commissioner Steele did mention that she did reach out about requesting information on the request for proposal regarding the feasibility study. So I thought it was pertinent and very important for us to bring that update to the commission. So the request for proposal did close on December 2nd, and so staff has been working. Community safety staff, in conjunction with our city manager's office, has been working on reviewing the proposals that have been received. We did receive 6 submittals, and so we're going to be going through reviewing that, vetting that, scheduling some interviews with those folks that submitted, and then the plan is to actually come to the Public Safety Commission with recommendations, staff's recommendations on what that would look like in terms of the chosen consultant, and this would be done prior to actually going to the City Council. So kind of the time frame in terms of doing that is we're looking at February, so our next commission meeting in terms of bringing forth recommendation to the Public Safety Commission, and then the item would actually go to the City Council in March of next year to get the process going based off of the direction that we received from the City Council. So we've been moving along quickly, as quick as possible in terms of that, trying to meet that time frame and that timeline that City Council established. And then the submittals in terms of what's been presented consultant-wise is that the study would be completed within 6 months. And so we want to make sure, right, that we're hitting that time frame, that we're able to accomplish this right towards the tail end of next year, as opposed to waiting any time further and pushing that along. But there will be obvious opportunity for the Public Safety Commission as well as other members to provide comments and participate in that item when it's brought forth in February, and then in March when it goes to the City Council as well. That'll also be another opportunity for this, members of the public and others in the community to provide input and feedback. So,
Okay, great, thank you. Item 11, public comments. I know we didn't have any in queue earlier. Do we have anyone waiting now?
There are no public comments on Zoom at the moment.
Okay, great, thank you. Item 12, commissioner comments. Commissioners, does anyone have any comments, closing comments?
Yes, just super brief. I'm afraid to even look at you now. I just wanted to know, Director Rivas, in regard to that RFP process, are we, are we going to have visibility on all 6 submissions or just the staff recommendations?
It more than likely will be the staff's recommendation at that point, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I really just want to put a very strong pitch in to look for work that these firms have done in the DEI space and in police accountability to whatever degree, right? And also, what are the makeups of these firms? Like, genuinely looking at the body, what is the board of directors, what's the executive level team? And I'll just be very frank with you, if it comes to looking at these things, what I'm looking for is to make sure that we've got people that have a track record that's not performative but performance-based, so not a statement per se, but actual executed work to make sure that we're coming at this from the lens of true and proper equity as it relates to the LGBTQ community, which we have to take into account, and of course, just equity in general. So I'm making my pitch, and that's my pitch. So
absolutely, Commissioner.
Thank you. Other than that, I just wanted to say that it's been an absolute pleasure to serve with this group of humans and all the robust exchanges and dialogues and opinions and all that good stuff. So I appreciate it, and thank you, Vice Chair and Chair, and happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you to you guys as well for all your hard work.
Any other commissioner comments before we adjourn?
Happy holidays and happy new year, everyone. May it be healthy and prosperous for everyone.
Well, I think it was a it was a good meeting, a robust discussion. I think we got a lot covered. We still have some questions that need to be answered, but I'm sure that we'll get the answers that we need. So, with that being said, we are adjourned until our 2023 meeting on February 13th. Thank you, staff. Happy holidays to all of my fellow commissioners. Happy holidays, Sheriff's Department, and everyone who is here in chambers. Thank you. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Good night.